My name is Tori Lupinek, and you are listening to The Unclassical Musician, the podcast empowering the new generation of classical musicians to take risks and live a fulfilling life. Each week, we dive in headfirst into a topic on the minds of young professional musicians and come out the other side with a new perspective on life as an artist. Hey, welcome back to The Unclassical Musician, the podcast. I hope that you have as much fun listening to today's episode as I had talking with Austin Pancner, the functional musician, this week. Our conversation is, I will say again, enlightening, multifaceted. There's so much good information. If you are interested in learning more about cultivating a healthy lifestyle that is inclusive of physicality, nutrition, and the mental aspects of just being a healthy person and how that translates to being a healthy musician, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you listen to this whole episode, because I believe we talked for like 45 minutes, but like the last 5 or 10 minutes are gold. If you don't know who Austin Pancner is, he is actually a bass trombonist. He's finishing his doctorate at Indiana University, and he is the owner/founder of The Functional Musician. So Austin is a certified personal trainer and exercise specialist. He's also a nutritionist. And his holistic transformation program is all about helping musicians go from pain and injury to being able to live and move fully functionally without any pain in like 4 months, which is pretty incredible. But after talking with him, I know that he's good on his word for sure. So I think you're really going to enjoy this. And without further ado, here's our conversation.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's
Good.
nice to finally meet you face to face.
I know. Oh my gosh. I feel like I started following you on Instagram, I think like towards the beginning of the pandemic. And I felt very seen by your content. And I just think that it's great and it's information that like people really need to hear. So I knew that eventually when I started having people on the show that I wanted to meet you.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm really glad you resonate with that content. And it's so nice to hear people really valuing what I put out there. And I mean, as you saw at the beginning of the pandemic, like I had no idea what I was doing. It's kind of, I mean, I'm curious to hear if you've like seen me grow or like, you know, change things and stuff like that. But it's definitely been a journey. And, you know, like I could say the same likewise, you know, like when I was starting out, I was like, cool, like I want to be on some podcasts. Like, who am I going to follow? So I've been following The Unclassical Musician for about 3 or 4 months now. And it's been pretty, yeah, it's been fun. It's been great. So I'm looking forward to tuning into what was her name? Was it Chelsea Tanner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's on my list of things to listen to. So super exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That like it always, I don't know why I'm always surprised when people decide to spend their time listening to my podcast, which I know like is kind of putting myself down, but people say all the time like, when did you like, why do you like, how did you decide that like you had things that you wanted people to hear and that you believed that people were going to want to listen to them? And I was just like, I don't know. I just feel like my life experiences are valid and maybe they can help others and like people can learn from my mistakes, and what
Yeah,
I'm doing.
totally.
So,
And it seems like everybody nowadays is getting into the podcasting zone. And, to be honest, like that's been one of my goals for like a year and a half. And I still haven't done it because a big part of that is that mindset hurdle you just talked about is like, are people going to want to listen? Like, what are you going to, talk to them about? What do you have to offer and all of that stuff? And granted, there are other things like standing in my way, but that mindset thing, I'm sure everybody who has a podcast at some point has gone through that for sure.
oh yes, definitely. And like pretty much what you said, like you've been thinking about it for like a year and a half. It took me like 2 years to actually finally like sit down and make the podcast happen, you know?
Yeah.
But like before the market gets so saturated with podcasts, it's like it's so important to remember that everyone's perspective and everyone's life path leading them to this point is unique, and everyone has their own unique perspective on things. And that will
Yeah.
speak to the right people. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
speak to 10,000 people a month. It just has to speak to the right people.
Exactly. And I love that. And that, that there's no reason to like, be in this or like think of it as a competitive space, but rather just a space of sharing and connecting with people and providing value, so congratulations on making that plunge. I guess I have 6 months until I'm launching mine.
You can do it. It's not that hard. I believe in you.
uh,
If your Instagram looks the way it does, you can definitely launch your own podcast. I promise.
Cool. Well, thank you for the encouragement.
Yeah, of course. So, can you please tell the people like a little bit about who you are, where you're at, what you're doing, how you're making money during a pandemic? Like, what's your story?
Yeah. So, oh man, that's a lot to digest there. So let's just back up towards the beginning of the pandemic, right? That was a big transition point for me. Um, and the pandemic hit. I was living with my girlfriend and her parents. I was finishing up coursework, and I was at this crossroads where it's like, cool, like what am I going to do with the pandemic? I've been talking to myself. I've been building up for this launch of the Functional Musician for probably 4 or 5 years. And there came a point where I was like, well, it's either now or never. So I ended up launching and figuring stuff out. And of course, I've had some help along the way from some generous mentors as well as other programs as well. And, through a lot of struggle, honestly, I was probably working 12, 14, sometimes 16-hour days just trying to get this up on the ground running. And it got to a point where I'm actually running the Functional Musician full time, and I don't have to go to an 8 to 5, which is really a blessing in so many ways because now I can focus on things that help my clients get results. I can focus on self-development. I can focus on improving my program. I can focus on learning things that, other people are doing that challenge my perspective and challenge my way of just viewing the world. So it's been a crazy, crazy ride. But basically, I'm at this point where I'm running the full musician. It's totally my purpose, totally the thing I want to do for the rest of my life. So that's like the biggest, I'm very grateful. I've been searching for that for my entire life. I'm so grateful I found it. But on the other end of things, like I love teaching. I love playing trombone. I'm finishing up my doctoral degree at IU. My goal is to finish by the end of 2021. We'll see if that happens. I'm definitely on track to do that though. And other than that, I'm just, between those three things, that's pretty much my life. And, spend time with my girlfriend. I spend time hiking, getting outside, trying to get as much sun and exercise and, just live that active, healthy lifestyle that's so important, which goes to practice what you preach, which we can talk about later. But that's basically my story in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. I think it's just so inspiring to see young musicians like actually build their own full-time income. Like normally, like that's awesome to see, but especially during a pandemic when everything is just like completely different than what we were expecting when we finished school,
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. And I didn't think I would be able to do it. No one thought I would be able to do it. Like no one. And it's just amazing. I'm so blessed. It's wild and crazy. And obviously, like, there's always things to learn. There's always room for improvement. But the fact that I'm able to make that happen just shows how much there is a need in our musical society.
Oh, for sure. And I'm honestly not surprised that you're able to do this because, I mean, number one, you're a classical musician and we're all like generally pretty driven people. But number two, like, there are a lot of musicians out there who struggle with things like performance related injuries or just their body not being able to support the long, like 8 or 10 hour playing days,
Yeah.
and who don't eat properly because they're so busy because they're going from one rehearsal to the next rehearsal and they're in class and stuff like that. But it's all connected, and it's everyone would benefit from it, but it's the kind of person who is like really trying to live their life to the fullest and use their body as functionally as they possibly can.
Yeah, and something that people just don't think about is, like, we have this vision in our head once we graduate, once we win that full-time job, everything just plays out and everything's good and merry. But all of those habits, all of the lifestyle choices that you made in your undergrad and your graduate degree or doctoral program or performance diploma or whatever, doesn't go away because those are habits that are embedded into your life. And a lot of people think, oh yeah, once I win the job, it's just going to be this perfect happy lifestyle. But oftentimes those habits come up and start creeping on their life and start inhibiting them in ways that they didn't really see coming. So I think it's just really important to make that bridge and just be open and start thinking about the future about, how could my lifestyle now impact me, even 3 years from now? It's an important question.
For sure. And I honestly, personally, as someone who has had a performance related injury in the past, I never even stopped to consider the financial repercussions of being limited by how much you can perform because of a performance related injury. If that's like your main livelihood, and if you get an injury or if you have to retire early because of an injury, like that income compounds, you know? I had never even
Yeah.
considered that before.
Yeah. I mean, when I was injured, I didn't consider that either. And I definitely missed out on, thousands of dollars of, freelancing performance opportunities around, Bloomington, Indiana um, that I wish I could have had, that extra 2 grand for a college student, that is a lot of money. And that can, help you in a lot of different ways, either for your food the entire year, pay for rent, or, take a lesson with some of the guest artists coming into the school.
Yeah, for sure. So all that goes to say, I think it's really important. But I think that this is a good segue into like, so you said that you had been wanting to start the functional musician for like 4 or 5 years. Like you knew that this was something that you wanted to do. So when did you know, or like how did you know that this was what you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So Indiana University has something called Project Jumpstart. It's like the OECD Office of Entrepreneurship and Career Development. And um, when I got injured, like, I had no idea what I'm going to do. I just started a new degree. I was like 1.5 months into a performer's diploma where I planned to be there for 2 years. Um, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I couldn't play. I couldn't practice. My identity was just gone. So I literally went to the OECD office and just talked to someone. Like, I was so depressed. I was so like, I don't know what to do. Maybe I should quit. Maybe I should work at Chipotle. Like, just pay off some debt and like get some free, delicious, spicy chicken or whatever. And there's this girl there, Joni Spain, and she just kind of talks to me, and like all of these ideas came out, and she's like, yeah, they're all out of all the ideas that came out of you, there was one that really you spoke with your heart, and I didn't even realize it at the time. And we just talked about it, and that's where the kind of this idea of helping other musicians go through this kind of just was planted in my mind. And it wasn't until I injured myself again and then again, and seeing other musicians at Indiana University go through very, very, very similar things, try to get out of it and couldn't get out of it. That's when I kind of like knew it was like this idea, like, okay, I want to help music, or I want to like help musicians. I don't know how. oh, I'm injured again. Oh crap, I'm injured again. And as I kept doing that, it was just like I kept honing my focus to kind of like where I saw myself being in that niche. And when I got past my injury, which was a very long journey, don't get that wrong. But it was at that point, like right after my first successful recital, like I share on Instagram that picture because it's very, very important to me, and it just has so much emotion embedded. Like when I look at it and think of it, and I can still remember the smell and the sounds. And it wasn't the greatest recital, like by any means, but I was able to complete it. I was able to get start to finish without any tension, without any pain. And I knew at that point that was a big turning point in my life, and that's when I kind of like knew I was like, okay, like I'm here, I'm getting a doctorate, I'm going to eventually like, have a studio of students that, I teach. But in the meantime, I got something bigger to do. And that's where the functional musician idea really solidified itself and really came to fruition.
That's fantastic. And I love that it just comes from a place of like wanting to help others who are struggling with the same kind of issues. Because, like, what's the
Yeah.
statistic? It's like 8 out of 10 professional musicians have some kind of performance related pain or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, like there are hundreds of studies out there and all of those percentages vary, but if you average them out, yeah, 8 out of 10 musicians, that's absolutely, it's insane. That's
It's
so many.
sad.
Yeah, it's very sad. And it's like, why haven't we done anything about it? And, I get the financial institution and academia and all of that, but still, like, that's just, it just breaks my heart.
And I feel like it shouldn't be normal. I feel like when it goes above 5 out of 10, then it becomes something that's normalized. But
Hmm.
like, this isn't, it's not normal to live your life with that kind of pain in order to perform well in your profession. Like, who else does that other than what, like, maybe professional athletes, which, like, yeah, you can draw that comparison also, but like, they make way more money than we do.
Way more
So,
money. And you know what they're doing when they're not on the field and working out? They are relaxing and
yep.
enjoying life and happy.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing people in our field just sacrifice their wellness, sacrifice their happiness, and go into this very cynical and almost like destructive mindset and just behavior from a social standpoint. We've all been around those people that you just do not want to be around. And
Mm-hmm.
when I can't imagine like getting into an orchestra job and having tenure, or getting into academia and entering a full-time studio and having like your colleagues that you spend regular time with on a daily basis just hate life, bring you down, and just try to beat you up mentally. That's not, why would you live that way?
Right.
I just don't understand.
Life is too short.
Life is too short. Let it go. Keep going on. Be happy. Laugh at yourself.
All
Love
that
it.
good stuff.
All that good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do you mind talking a little bit more about your performance injury that you had? I remember, I think, reading on your website, you were switching from tenor trombone to bass trombone, and like, what happened there?
Yeah. The older I get, the more it becomes a blur, which is why I'm glad I'm talking about it now, so I can remember when I'm like 40. But basically, like I switched to tenor and bass trombone because I had a lot of performance opportunities at Indiana University, and I had a lot of encouragement from my teacher at the time. And it was the exact same horn I had, except it was bass trombone. So I was like, cool. And the added weight did not agree with my wrist, and I did some like ergonomic things. I experimented or whatever, but I was practicing 8 to 10 hours a day, or not practicing. I was practicing 2 hours a day, but I was, in rehearsals and other things I was preparing for 8 to 10 hours a day. And a month in, my forearm started tweaking, my wrist didn't feel good. I started getting numbness, tingling, some sharp pain, not too much sharp pain. I just thought, like on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 3 out of 10. Like it wasn't that painful. It wasn't destroying my life. But in the middle of a rehearsal, that 3 out of 10 instantly turned a dime and went to a 10 out of 10. and I completely blew out my forearm. Like, it was just like I couldn't even lift my arm. I couldn't bend it without searing pain. And
Oh.
I was in a jazz band rehearsal, Brent Rollerad big band, and I remember sitting right next there. I remember it happening. We were still playing this, we were running through a piece. We were sight reading a lot of material like he likes to do, and I kind of gave him this look like, oh crap, something just happened. And I walked out the door really, really calmly, but I didn't return. I was too embarrassed. So I had to wait until after jazz band to come back and talk to him. But, it was at that point where I was like, crap, I just started this new degree. I invested all my time, money. I just signed a lease, XYZ. I've been here for X amount of years. Like, what's going to happen now? And luckily I didn't have to stop playing. Like, I got this thing like an ergobone, which is like a bipod for your trombone, or not a bipod, but like a single pod for your trombone, whatever that's called. And yeah, and basically it would go on the chair, and I would be able to play and rest all of the weight on that. But still, like with trombone and the brass armature, you really need that, that you really want that finite flexibility of your mouthpiece to kind of move organically with your armature, with your lips. And I lost that. So that hurt my progress a lot. But, I got to a point where a year later, performance diploma again, I injured my shoulders, and I couldn't like lift my shoulders up, past parallel. I had a lot of impingement. I had a little bursitis going on, and that was really hard, because even when I went to go play trombone and just hold up, if you notice, like my arm does go up, it it hurt a lot. So it was very frustrating. At that point, I'm like, well, should I start thinking about other career choices? Blah, 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 blah. It got a little bit better, and I ended up auditioning for a doctorate, not thinking I would get in because I'm injured, injured musician mindset for sure. But I did get in. So I was like, cool, well, that's a sign. I'll take it from a sign from the universe. I'll keep going. And then my first doctoral recital, a week before my recital, most prepared I've ever been. I was practicing so well. I thought it sounded really, really nice and made a lot of improvements. And then it got to the point where I injured something in my back. Like my scapula just wasn't happy. And every time I took a breath, it's just like searing pain. Anything above like 80%. And with bass trombone and the pedagogical background that I grew up in from a trombonist standpoint, like you need that full chamber of air all the time. And that greatly affected my recital, and I ended up failing. So that was really disheartening. I took it very personally, and I know it wasn't anybody's fault. I would have failed me too with how I sounded. But I had to do a lot of soul searching after that. I ended up taking 2 solid months off the instrument. And at that point, I had my certifications. I was seriously considering not coming back next semester. I had to switch studios. I had to go through a lot of crap that no student should really have to go through in an academic setting, just from a logistical standpoint and figuring stuff out. And during that 2-month time, I did a lot of soul searching. I didn't end up quitting. I ended up sticking it out. But those 2 months that I kind of took a rest was really that pivotal moment in my recovery, where I actually was able to start recovering and build a foundation that would support my playing. And granted, this was all think about it like this, during that time too, it was 3 years, and I was constantly trying to figure this out. I was constantly adjusting and experimenting. And that injury that I developed right before my recital was that last little piece of the puzzle. And I was like, okay, now I truly know the root cause. And once I found the root cause of all of my injuries, I was able to, or at least that injury, it had this trickle down effect, and I was actually able to return to a functional state, 4 months later, and perform my first recital free of tension and pain. And it's just crazy that I went through an entire cycle, 3 years, and I was able to get back on track in 4 months just because I was doing the right things. It doesn't have to take 3 years. And I'm a huge believer in that. And a lot of people give me a lot of crap for it. How can you say you help people in 3 months? But I'm a results driven person. I'm a solutions driven guy. And if it works for me, if it's been working for all of my other clients too, I think I'm on the right track to something really, really, life changing for a lot of people. And you don't have to struggle for 3 years like I did. You don't have to struggle for 5 years if you've been going through it for a long time, if you do the right things. Sorry if I keep rambling on, but if you switch it and we just look at music, there are those students that win a job after studying for 1 or 2 years. They weren't with the process for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. They were doing the right things all of the time. And because of that, they were able to accelerate their growth and increase their chances of winning the job. They didn't go in there and like absolutely, I don't know if they went in there and crushed it, but they definitely increased their chances and like got to that level at an accelerated rate.
So for you in that 4-month span, what did you do?
Yeah, well, the first 2 months, I did not touch my trombone.
There you go.
Honestly,
okay.
I didn't know if I ever wanted to touch my trombone again. I was like, I'm going to sell this. I'm going to enroll in business school and whatever I'm going to do. I did so many different things. It was but really what I did was I created healthy habits that supported me in my everyday life, generating a lot of energy to tackle all of the things I wanted to do in a day. So rather than have that mid-afternoon crash and relying on coffee to push me through from 2 to 7 p.m. I had it naturally. Of course, don't get me wrong, like I love coffee and I still drank coffee, but I wasn't relying on it to create that like mental and physical energy to get stuff done. I was prioritizing my mental health and my physical health above other. Those were non-negotiable. Every single day I was working on that. Meditation was huge. I remember taking a meditation mindfulness course with Dr. Diaz at Indiana University. I highly recommend anybody listening to go check out him. He has a mindfulness course he does every summer. That was absolutely life-changing, just from being able to be present and being able to filter out all of these negative thoughts, all of these thoughts that are destructive to our growth and just our well-being, like all that cynicism I talked about earlier. And skepticism and doubts and worry and fear and inaction and all that fun stuff. And I also like developed healthy movement patterns, because what's really, really fascinating, the more research I do into it, movement patterns and your pain receptors, they're on the same wavelength. So I was moving very inefficiently. I was in marching band. I was an athlete. If you look at my posture 10 years ago, like, oh, it was so shocking. Like, no wonder I experienced what I did. But all of those things added up, and I just found my movements to be very inefficient. I couldn't even lift my arm above my head in a healthy way. I was so worried about my shoulders, just waking up and living every day with my shoulders just absolutely searing and uncomfortable. And I was afraid every time I went down and picked something up that I would hurt my lower back, all of those things. And there were a couple of other things I did that I needed to do, but just in terms of things that really set up that foundation, just showing up for myself every day with those daily health and wellness habits and integrating them into my life. So I wasn't doing it for a day or two. I was really committing to the process. I was really committing to the change. And, I think the thing that changed during that time was I trusted the process, because, I wasn't approaching it from okay, I'm going to get to performing without pain at that point, honestly, because of that injury. And I was considering quitting and pursuing a different career. I was literally just like, cool, like if I don't play trombone, am I still going to experience this pain? And it was outside of trombone. So I wanted to get back to a point where I could enjoy life and just live and do the things I loved: play ultimate frisbee, play flag football, like do a front flip during dodgeball while simultaneously getting the last person out on the other team. Still could never do that. Still a dream. But
you could, though. You have the mobility now that you could.
Yes, that's right. I would be scared to do a front flip without a trampoline, but that is something I will do before I die. 100%.
Good. Wow. I have like so many thoughts about everything that you just said. One being, I do think that I see this trend with people who have either had some kind of hardship, like towards the end of their education or at some point in their education, that the unifying factor is taking a considerable time away from the instrument and just music in general, and making time for the things that like normal people can make time for on an average day, like just eating right, exercising well, and drinking water and meditating, and like all of these things that like everyone tells you to do when you're in school, but when you're in rehearsals for 8 to 10 hours a day, who has time to actually do all of those things all the time?
Yeah. And I mean, that goes down to expectations of being in an academic setting. I mean, it's totally unrealistic. And, there are teachers out there, there are people who are like, you need to serve everybody. You need to like show up during these, 2, 3, 5 years, whatever, and put everybody else before yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the same people that leave school wanting to do a different career. Or if you've ever experienced one of those friends just randomly, they're just like, this isn't what I want to do anymore. I'm done. I quit. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing something else. And it's those musicians that hold that passion and support their mental and physical health that are going to be successful over the long term, because they have that endurance, they have that stamina, they have that healthy mindset. Even if you did, completely go through that negative, cynical, destructive cycle in your graduate school degree and you want a job, that's still going to follow you. You're still setting out that negative energy into the universe and it's going to bring it back. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're in a job, maybe you only hold that job for 3 years. Then the next person who wins, who is patient, who grew through these problems, who prioritized their health and wellness and prioritized what they needed to do, they're going to hold that job for the rest of their careers. Short-term results versus long-term results. And granted, like that's not going to apply to everybody, of course, but you do see that a lot where people's health deteriorates very, 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 very fast and they can't hold their job. And imagine if they were able to hold that job for an extra 30 years, going back to your
Mm-hmm.
financial compounding question. If you're playing in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, 30 times 150K, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Yeah.
All with prioritizing 40 minutes a day. 40 minutes a day for almost $5 million at the end of your life. That's comparatively speaking, that's pretty amazing.
I mean, yeah, I would take it.
Yeah. But I mean, like, yeah, going back to the school thing, like I didn't do that. I know like so many people who do that. And it's this culture of just hustling, this culture of sacrificing your health in order to jumpstart your career, or to help other people and show up. It's just, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, not from only us, but from an academic setting and from a teacher setting, because those students are going to listen to their teachers, whether those habits are destructive or not.
Right. That's definitely true. I do think that like the more people I talk to, like since starting this podcast, is like, oh my gosh, I hope that academia is listening. Like I hope that they are picking up what all of these recent music graduates and like DMA students and people who are like dealing with the pandemic and stuff right now, like the way that the system is working as it stands is not going to last. I don't want to say, like, I don't want to be ungrateful because I'm not, but I do feel like to a certain extent we get a little ripped off because people spend all of this money to go to these great institutions and then we still leave with maybe more problems than we had going in.
Yeah, 100%. And granted, like there are always those star music students that are going to succeed, just because of who they are, but I mean, even coming down from just like a transitioning from academia to the professional world, there are some schools that are really, really great, but there are also some schools that don't have any resources to provide for students transitioning from that student to that professional career. And in the 21st century, you just can't make it as only a performer anymore. You got to have other skill sets. You got to be able to teach, to market, to advertise, and to get out of your comfort zone, I think is a huge one that we don't really do in music school other than performance scenarios. A lot of the times when I think why one of the reasons or one of the contributing factors to not doing meditation is because it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. They have to sit in their thoughts. They have to literally like think about what they're doing. And for a lot of people, just sitting down and doing nothing, especially in a 21st century hustle culture, is just so uncomfortable for them. So uncomfortable. But yet it's so life-changing, and you're not going to grow if you can't get out of your comfort zone. And, I see that with a lot of students transitioning into the professional world in a lot of different ways. So that's a very good, what's the word? Lost my train of thought. I value your perspective. I agree with it.
Oh, good. Thank you. It seems like you do. So Austin, I mean, okay, so I will say, because my performance injury was TMJ, and I personally think that part of the reason why it was such an issue for me is because of I what is the word that you use? Like my movement was not correct. What was the term you used?
Yeah, I would say correct. I'd say your movement, I use the word healthy. You have healthy
Mm-hmm.
movements, unhealthy. I would probably say movements healthy or functional.
Maybe functional. Yeah. And because I was compensating for muscles that were not doing what they were supposed to do with smaller muscles that shouldn't have been taking all of the weight of the bigger muscles. So
Hmm.
I found that after I went through physical therapy and I got like my night guard and I started exercising more, as my body got stronger, the like TMJ just kind of like took care of itself. Do you think that maybe if more young musicians made like regular exercise a priority earlier on, that fewer people would end up getting injured at some point in their career?
Oh, yes,
Mm-hmm.
100%. 100%. If you're a musician and you're not exercising, you're doing yourself a disservice because your mental health, your physical health, and just your life is going to suffer at some point or another. And if you take anything from this podcast, like go out and exercise. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to run 50 miles, definitely take small steps and, integrate that into your life and experiment with what works for you. But, um, one of the reasons, and it's not just musicians, but if you just look at America, one of the reasons why we're having so many health problems is because we're just not exercising. We're sitting around, we're watching Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it's COVID and we all
Yeah.
have our vices. But, exercise is, you need it as a human. You need exercise to survive, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So I would 100% agree with you. I'm sure every person in the health and wellness field would agree with you too. Um, so if you're someone who, hasn't been exercising in a while, I'm not trying to shame you. I'm just trying to show you, hey, like, look at the longevity of your life. Think about the mental and the physical benefits you get from exercise and consider getting back into exercise, because once you're off that train, it can just be so hard to show up for yourself and be like, cool, today is the day I'm going to exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe next week. And then next thing you know, it's 2022 and we're still having the same conversation.
Right. Yeah. I do think that perhaps if students didn't feel so much pressure to spend as much time as possible in the practice room, then more of them would spend more time physically moving their bodies, like exercising. And I only say that because when I was in grad school, like I was in a lesson one time and I was burnt out. I was like
Mm,
done. And I
hmm.
told my professor that I was feeling bad about myself because I haven't had time to exercise because all of my free time has been spent trying to practice to prepare. And even then, I'm only practicing like an hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And he said, as someone who gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning and goes running before coming to school, he said, it's okay if you want to take one day off of practicing to go to the gym for an hour. Like, you can do that. I want you to do that. Why I needed to get permission from him, I don't know. I shouldn't
Yeah,
have.
interesting.
But why did I feel that I needed to do that at that point? You know?
Yeah, totally. Totally. And I mean, like, I've been told too through my education, like, um, I was kind of a fraternity person back in the day. So I wore the bro tanks and my teachers would, they'd ask, like, oh, are you like a gym nut kind of person? And be like, no, but I go to the gym. And I've been told, like, don't exercise. It's going to affect your trombone playing. Be careful. You should really be practicing in the practice room rather than spending your time at the gym.
Wow.
And, I really, that did not resonate well with me. So what did I do? I spent more time at the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Um, regretted that kind of, but that just goes to show you, like, I'm glad you had a teacher that supported you and was like, hey, go to the gym, like take that day off, listen to yourself. Um, But sometimes you won't have those teachers who will be like, you need to practice all of that time. And it's really about listening to yourself and just learning what you need. And I was also looking for permission from my teachers too to go to the gym, and they told
Mm-hmm.
me no, so I did it anyway. But
Mm.
that's my stubborn personality coming into effect. But I think that's valid. And just thinking about what you need and what your body's telling you to do, it's really important.
For sure. So, like, as someone who has their certification in personal training and corrective movement, I guess is what you say the technical term is, like, what are some of the best types of exercise that you would recommend for musicians who are, like, concerned about accidentally hurting themselves and then not being able to play or something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. There, different strokes for different folks. I know musicians who are powerlifters, who bulk, who are
Mm-hmm.
huge and sound amazing at their instrument. I hear people who do yoga every day, amazing at their instrument. On the contrary, I also see people who do those and they're really bad at their instrument.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're not really bad. There's a lot of tension there inhibiting them from really performing their instrument at a high level. Sorry for the communication there. But what it really comes down to is healthy movement. Movement is a language. This is something we're just kind of like thrown into, as we're babies. We learn to crawl, we learn to stand, we learn to walk, we learn to run, we learn to fall and fail and not care, big one.
Mm-hmm.
But fast forward to up until, today, anybody who's listening to this could be 18 all the way up to 50. There are healthy movement patterns and there are dysfunctional movement patterns. And no matter what modality you're in, movement is a language, and we need to teach our body and learn how our body moves, learn how our body responds. And if you can do that, no matter what movement you go into, whether it's boxing, weightlifting, powerlifting, yoga, Pilates, you are going to be more in control of your body and more in control of the situation. And you're going to you're going to have a greater chance of preventing injuries from happening in the future. And I think it's when, you start lifting under load, when you start compromising those positions, that you increase your chance for injury. So going back to your question, like, what would I recommend? I would recommend people to start, or musicians to start learning the language of music, or the move. I would recommend musicians to start learning the language of movement.
There we go. Yes.
And every Monday, I'm not saying like I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. Every Monday I post a mobility routine, Monday mobility. And there are, if you've heard of Yoga for All Musicians, if you love yoga, like, I would highly recommend those people. Like, those three girls are, some of the nicest people in the world. I have yet to try one of their yoga routines. That's definitely on my list of things to do. If you're listening, Yam Studio. But other than that, it's just taking the time to show up for yourself and figure out how your body moves and how it responds. If something's hurting, if you have tension, that's something that you're going to want to check in and figure out what's going on. And this is why feedback in learning any type of language, whether it's music, Spanish, German, or movement, is so crucial and important. And this also goes to consistency. You can't learn music, you can't learn Spanish or German or French or movement if you don't show up for yourself every day and you're consistent with your practice. If you don't use it, you lose it. And the same thing applies here. You could take the most fittest, athletic, gifted, greatest athletic accomplishments in the world. If he sits on a couch for 3 weeks in a row, I'm telling you, that athletic prowess is going down. Sure. His movement efficiency is going down, and that's going to result in an increased chance of injury. So very open-ended question on my end for the response. But, if you're someone who's not just moving, not experimenting, not working out, like, go out and move, figure out how your body works. If something is hurting, that's just a sign that your body is sending you to be like, I'm either moving wrong, I'm exhausted, I'm fatigued, I need rest, or something's just going on here. I need a little TLC.
And you do not need to have a background in Alexander technique or body mapping in order to know that something is not right.
No, definitely
Yeah.
not. And I don't have a background in Alexander technique or body mapping. In fact, those modalities did not help me develop the level of body awareness that I needed to transition out of through my recovery period back to being functional.
That's interesting that you say that because I personally, like, I had been doing yoga on and off, like, since I was a teenager. I was always kind of like into yoga. Um, but it wasn't until I started taking actual Alexander Technique lessons in grad school that I was able to. So I took the Alexander Technique and I applied it to the yoga, but the correct yoga positions were what actually helped me correct a lot of other things that I had going on.
Yeah, exactly. Because going back to your like the weak or the your weak you had weak muscles, so you had other muscles taking over the role of the weak
Mm-hmm.
muscles because they couldn't handle that load. So the muscles taking over also couldn't handle that load. If you're going into any of these movement practices like yoga, mobility or strength training or whatever, and you have these compensations, they're going to show up in your movements and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
show up as you probably experienced with a lot of tension or like some
Mm-hmm.
afterward warning signs where you feel like, oh, like, holy cow, I just deadlifted and now but it didn't hurt when I was lifting, but 3 hours later, oh, like I can't even move my lower back. That
Mm-hmm.
is a huge, 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 huge sign.
Man, so many
Yeah.
things that like we should have learned so long ago, and so many
Yeah.
people could have been helped.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't blame us. It's not our fault.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely could have held myself accountable and gotten help sooner. I definitely did try to get help, but I mean, like sooner, as in like going into my undergrad, like going to a personal trainer, going to someone who knows about movement to learn about this, and I think Alexander technique is a great modality. So is Feldenkrais and body mapping. But what I think we should err on the word of caution is thinking that that is going to be a full term solution for your life.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're only doing body mapping or Alexander technique or Feldenkrais, you're still not exercising. You're still not, getting your cardiovascular health to a point that can support, a lot of heavy breathing and prolonged periods of exertion. And same thing, like you could do Alexander technique and body mapping, but if you eat a cheeseburger every day, by the time you get to 50, your chances of heart disease go up by 66% by two out
Right.
of three, and it's absolutely insane. So it is a great modality, not putting it out, but just know that there are other important essential areas of your life that you're going to want to integrate into your life as well.
Right. So speaking of eating a cheeseburger every day, um,
Ooh, now I'm hungry.
I know it's like almost lunchtime. Um, like, is there any particular type of diet or way of eating that you think or have experienced to be like most beneficial for musicians who are like athletes of the small muscles, as they say?
Yeah, that's a great question. Uh, Pardon me while I get on my soapbox here and preach a little bit,
Uh
but
huh.
I actually hate the word diet. Like,
Uh
I
huh.
absolutely hate it. And when anybody says the word diet, I kind of I dig in a little bit. But basically, like a diet in its definition, if you go look it up on Google right now, it's a restriction. It's a
Mm-hmm.
restriction, a temporary restriction in order for some type of health benefit. And I think going to a dietary specialist or a nutritionist has its benefits if you have some underlying health problems.
Mm-hmm.
They can really, really help you with that. In that case, diets from a medical standpoint is great. But if you're just looking at your daily life, approaching it from a diet sense is very restrictive. It can also tie in a lot of negative emotions with your daily eating habits. And I think I actually look at it as nutrition now. In
Mm.
nutrition, if you look up the Google definition, I mean, it's absolutely beautiful. It's like the food or energy one needs to nourish themselves for life or something.
Huh.
I'm paraphrasing, but it's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And I really, really resonate with that. And I don't think of diets in the sense of restricting myself. I ate a pizza the other day,
Mm-hmm.
but most of the time, like 80% of the time, I'm eating foods that provide me energy, that provide me clarity, and leave my mind feeling very, very clear and focused. And because I've been consistent with it for so long, if I eat food like the pizza, I'm very hyper aware of how those bad foods, or not bad foods, sorry, but foods with high sodium, saturated fats, and carbs make me feel. And I don't like how it makes me feel anymore. You know, it makes me feel sad, makes me feel mopey. What did I do after I watched or I ate pizza? I watched a movie because I didn't want to move. So it's like, I think if we look at the nutrition standpoint, from one end, like we do want to just support our daily life and have that energy and be aware of how foods make us feel. But on the other hand, like we are athletes of small muscle and we need to provide our body with energy and nutrients it needs to perform at the highest level. Because you are what you eat, in the sense that if you put in low energy foods, you're going to feel low in energy. If you put in high energy, high quality foods, you're going to feel like a higher quality human being. And that's kind of how I approach it. And I got that from Precision Nutrition. If anybody out there is interested in reading more about nutrition and just kind of that philosophy and way of approaching things.
So I think that some people might say high energy foods. Well, like my sugary soda that I drink every day gives me high energy because it has sugar in it. And then I have caffeine and it helps me get things done. But then that's not actually a high energy food.
Yeah, it's good to note here. I'm glad you mentioned that. This is something I talk about. I think I talked about this on Instagram a long time ago, but basically, like, if you have excess sugar, glucose, that's going to result in blood spikes. That's going to result, excuse me, it's going to result in a sugar crash. So you do have that energy at the beginning, but then that sugar crash is so intense. You're in the middle of a practice session and you're just like, whoa, Austin needs a nap. Like, that's going to affect your productivity with whatever you're working on, and with the caffeine too, that's going to affect your hydration. If you're relying on caffeine for your energy, chances are, unless you're on top of your hydration, you are going to be dehydrated, which in effect is going to affect how agile and how much endurance your joints and your muscles have. It's going to affect your sleep. It's going to affect your ability to be able to hold your posture up for a long period of time. It's going to affect your ability to focus. It literally has this ripple effect, if you're not careful. And, for me, like, it is a constant balance between hydration and coffee, because I'm drinking coffee right now. I just love it. I love the taste. I don't really do it for energy. I just really, really enjoy it. However, if I do have a little bit too much coffee, I notice that I'm more tired the next day because I was dehydrated for a longer period of time. And it took my body a little bit of time to recover and get all that caffeine out of your system.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm also just like addicted to caffeine. I don't drink as much caffeine as I used to. I love the taste of coffee. I love the taste of espresso. I like my lattes. I like my cappuccinos,
Yeah,
but I know
see, I'm a cold brew guy. I could
okay.
literally drink like 3 cold brews a day and I'd be on top of the world. That's
Woo!
also the equivalent of like 6 to 8 cups of coffee.
Yeah. Also, I hope you're drinking it through a straw, because your dentist would say that's doing a number on your teeth too, probably.
No. Oh my gosh. Well, actually, no, I'm not going to tell that story. But okay, I'll tell the story.
Okay.
I went to the dentist for the first time. Everybody can call me out on my crap. I went to the dentist for the first time 2 months ago, for the first time in 8 years.
Oh, that's
and
a
thankfully,
long time.
I did not have any cavities. Like, knock on wood, I didn't have any cavities. Thank you for brushing routines and good habits. But that's really good to know. I'm going to start drinking my coffee through a straw. That is, yeah.
Yeah, I got called out by my dentist the last time I went because I just drink my hot coffee or my hot espresso, and you don't use a straw to do that. But the reason why, like, everyone at Starbucks like asks for straws, I only know this because I used to work at Starbucks. It's because they're trying to not stain their teeth with the coffee and the black tea.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Crazy. Yeah, I
know.
didn't think about that.
Just so you know, like, they also said that if you do drink coffee not through a straw and you're not able to brush your teeth afterwards, to make sure that you swish with water and spit it out at least.
Wow. Sounds like I have 2 new habits I need to implement.
I mean, I only mention that because it seems like something that you would be interested in, just because you're so on top.
Are you saying something about my teeth?
No, just as someone who drinks coffee and is interested in like using their body to its fullest
Yeah,
capacity.
totally.
You know, your teeth are
Yeah,
included in that.
for sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for the tips. I'm totally going to take you up on that.
Okay. Well, Austin, I don't want to take up too much more of your time today, but I think this conversation was enlightening. I hope that the people listening get a lot out of it. I know I got a lot out of it. Can you please tell everyone listening where they can find you on the internet, and if they want to work with you, where they can do that?
Sure. Yeah. So you can go to my website, www.thefunctionalmusician.com. I'm also on Instagram, the_functional_musician. And I'm also on LinkedIn. But I will just throw this out there that all of my content, original content, is uploaded to Instagram, and then that's kind of dispersed through Facebook and LinkedIn. So if you want to contact me over on LinkedIn, Instagram, that is the best way to get a hold of me, and just shoot me a message and say hello. I'd love to connect. I'd love to hear your story, and I'd love to hear what's going on, and see if and how I can help. And if you just want to connect and say hi and be like, hey, I enjoyed that podcast, or be like, hey, like, I love diets, like, go ahead and send me a message. Like, either way, it would be great to connect and meet some new people.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Austin, for agreeing to come on and giving your time so freely and your expertise with the people listening. I really appreciate you.
Of course. Well, thank you so much, Tori, for the invite. I mean, this conversation was great, and I really hope people got a lot out of it. So thank you so much for hosting, and it was great talking to you.
Yeah, and it was great to meet you in person, finally.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, awesome. Well, have a great rest of your weekend, okay?
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Again, I hope you had as much fun listening to that as I had experiencing it. And I hope that you got a lot out of it, because I got a lot out of it, for sure. And I, of course, will put links to all of Austin's stuff in the show notes so you can find him. You're definitely going to want to find him on Instagram. He has a lot of really good content on there, for sure. And one last thing before I leave you for today. Again, I am like over the moon every step of the way with this podcast, going from like build it yourself to like feeling pretty official. But I am very proud to say that the Unclassical Musician now has an official Patreon page. Woo! Which, if you are a podcast listener and have been a longtime podcast listener, you know about Patreon. You've definitely heard about it. Basically, it's like crowdfunding for creators. So if you have a show that you really like and enjoy listening to, and you want to support with a few dollars per month, you can support the show on Patreon, and you get some awesome little bonus content tidbits in exchange for your monies. And I really have to say, like, with the amount that this podcast has grown in just like the last month, if each listener contributed $1, I would have all of my expenses for producing the show taken care of, like, no problem. So you can become a member of the Unclassical Musician Patreon community for as little as $5 per month. And at that official patron $5 per month level, you get to exclusively submit topics and get shout outs on episodes when your topic airs. So just so you know, creating podcasts does take a lot of time and effort and money. And if you're enjoying it and you're getting something out of the content, I am so glad, and I would really appreciate it if you would consider joining our community on Patreon. We've got tiers from $5, $10, and $20, and I will include the link in the show notes so you can check that out. I would really appreciate it if you would consider contributing to this awesome community that we're building. So, one more thing before you go today, I wanted to let you know the next episode that's going to air next Tuesday on February 2nd is going to be all about how to make money now during the pandemic when everything is online. Income for musicians during a pandemic. Just some of my thoughts, some of the things I've observed in the last, 11 months at this point. If you're struggling a little bit to make ends meet and maybe feeling like, oh God, I hope that this pandemic doesn't go on much longer because my savings account can't handle it, you're definitely going to want to take a listen. And I hope that I will be in your ears then. Thanks, y'all. Have a great rest of your week.